You are one of Sonic characters working together throughout dice roll challenges to finally defeat the boss. But at the end, the best player will be the victor in Sonic Roll.
And today we'll be teaching you how to play Sonic Roll, game designed by Anthony Thorpe and published by Kesco.
And hello everyone, it's Stella.
And Tarrant here from the Dice Tower.
Alright, let's get to the game.
The evil Dr. Eggman and his badniks are at it again, capturing the small animals of the world and working towards domination. Now it's up to Sonic and the gang to fight back in tabletop form. Players will roll dice as they traverse the side-scrolling platform sceneries, avoid badniks, collect rings and other bonuses, and fight to defeat Dr. Eggman and release the animals. Over several different modes of play, players will fight to bring Dr. Eggman to justice. I'll take you through the basic cooperative play first. To set up, each player chooses which character they'll play. Each player takes 3 life points and 1 boost token. Sonic gets this Insta-Shield token, and Knuckles takes the special red Secret Passage card. Choose which of the 4 zones you'll play. For your first game, choose the Green Hill zone. Take all of the components specific to this zone. This will include the Act board, the Boss Attack card which matches the Act board, the deck of Badnik cards which matches this zone, and the deck of matching zone cards. For these 4 components, return all that don't match your zone to the box. Shuffle up the zone cards and then deal out a smaller deck of 8 in a 1 or 2 player game, 9 in a 3 player game, or 10 in a 4 player game, returning the rest of those to the box. Then set up the Act board on Act 1 and lay out 3 zone cards alongside like so. Beside the Act board, make a stack of 7 time tokens. Shuffle the badniks into a face-down stack and set the Boss Attack off to the side for now. Shuffle face-down decks of Boss Patterns, Power-Ups and Chaos Emeralds. You'll use all the cards in every zone. Shuffle the bonus stage tiles and lay them into a 4x4 grid. Finally, lay out the pools of dice in blue, yellow, red and black, the boost tokens, animals and rings. Choose a first player and you're now ready to play. Sonic Roll is played in turns. That is, each player will take a turn which is composed of several steps before play passes to the next player clockwise. On a turn, a player will be looking at 3 zone cards which are in the centre of the table and common to all players, and between 0 and 3 badnik cards which will belong specifically to the player they're in front of. Exactly how these cards come to be here we'll talk about later. The basic flow of a turn is as follows. Firstly, you'll roll. You choose a roll action and then roll the relevant dice into your pool. Next, you'll spend a single die from your pool onto a matching numbered space on a zone card or a badnik, resolving any effects, positive or negative, which this might trigger. If the die you placed was blue, then you may place another die now before continuing. But otherwise you must re-roll all of the dice in your pool before spending again. You'll keep re-rolling and spending dice until you're either out of dice or you choose to end your turn. There are many dangers as your turn continues. If you ever don't have any legally numbered dice that you can spend, then you suffer damage, possibly losing a life. If when you re-roll you hit a number which matches a badnik, then again you suffer damage. And if you ever choose to end your turn when there are still dice in your pool, then some of the scenario's time is exhausted. If any player runs out of lives, or if all players run out of time, then the scenario is lost. But if collectively you can fight through all the zone cards and then defeat the boss, then you'll win the zone. As with any video game, in addition to your primary aim of defeating the boss, you're also trying to earn points. The points don't help you beat the boss, and they're not a prerequisite to winning the game. But as with any arcade machine, The only thing better than beating the game is beating it with a high score. As such, any time through the video that I tell you to collect something for points, this is what it's for. So now let's have a look at a turn in detail. Each turn is broken into a number of iterations of 4 main steps: the roll step, spending step, reroll step, and end of turn. Performing the right steps and effects at the right times is important and can be represented by this flowchart. And while at first this may look like a lot, I'll take you through it step by step. First is start of turn. If you're Sonic, you'll refresh your Insta-Shield token, and if you're Tails, place a yellow die of value 2 here. Otherwise, take a moment to review any Badnik cards you have in front of you, as some of them have passive abilities that you'll need to remember which don't correspond to a specific step. Next, proceed to the roll step. Here is where you will build up your pool of red, blue, or yellow dice that you'll be using for this turn. Firstly, choose one of your character's 3 roll actions. Then take the depicted dice and roll them once to form your dice pool. If the action you choose does not have a roll effect printed underneath it, then it's as simple as that. But if it does, then you'll manipulate the dice you've just rolled before you settle on your final pool. With Super Peel Out, for example, I would roll 6 blue dice, and then discard the lowest or all of the equal lowest dice from the pool. With Spin Dash, I would roll a blue and a red, then roll another blue and red, and would keep going until any 2 dice in the pool matched. The specifics of all of the roll abilities, including some examples, are shown on the back sides of each player's card. Finally, if you have any Badniks or other effects with a dice action effect, then you'll resolve that now. Here, for example, discarding 1 die from your pool with the highest value. You'll now move to the spending step, and in most cases you'll use this to place 1 die from your pool into play. There are 2 places to which you can spend a die. Those are to a zone card or to a Badnik. Zone cards must be filled from left to right with dice of matching number and, if it's not printed white, matching colour. So the first die here would be a 4 of any colour, while the next would be a 5 of any colour, but if you want to take the top path, it would be a 5 of yellow. The team can't switch paths unless there's a junction point, so if this 3 were placed first, the next one would have to be a 2 down here. If a card has a string of bumpers, the first die in that string may be any number, but each subsequent die must match the one before it. If you place on a Badnik, then you place either on the top or bottom number of the card, never on both. Ignore the numbers in this strip on the left, those have a different purpose. After spending your 1 die, you will resolve all of the spend effects that this triggers. If you spent on a zone card, this means gaining the benefit or the penalty which is closest to the die you placed. If you filled the last box on a zone card, then in addition you get the act reward which is printed next to that card, and after removing the dice, you take that card and add it to your collection for points. Immediately replenish that card from the top of the deck. If you have any spend effects on Badniks in your collection, resolve them. If on this turn you chose a roll action which has a spend effect, then you can resolve that. If the die you spent was yellow, whether it was on a zone card or a Badnik, gain 1 ring, which you add to your collection. The yellow dice represent jumping, and there's always rings on offer if you jump up into the air looking for them. The above effects can be resolved in whichever order is most beneficial. For example, if I'd used drop dash to spend a yellow die and had a moto bug, I could choose to use drop dash's effect first to gain a blue die, which would then mean that moto bug's effect did not apply. Finally, resolve dice placed on Badniks. If you place a die on the lower slot, then you don't defeat the badnik, but you do avoid it, leaving it behind. In this case, simply discard the badnik. If you play it on the top slot, then you've defeated the badnik. The top slot is always red and represents your spin die. If you know the video game, spinning into an enemy is what defeats them. When you do it this way, gain one small animal for points before discarding the badnik. You'll also see these two terms, defeat and avoid, on some player and badnik abilities. If you see them here, they mean different things. An avoid effect on a player card may be used at any time on your turn. Think of it as thematically avoiding some other obstacle, while a defeat effect on a badnik will resolve when this card is discarded, whether it's defeated or avoided. Next, check to see whether the die you just placed was blue, which represents running. If it was, then you may optionally return to the start of the spending phase to spend another die. If not, your spending phase is over. If when you start your spending step there are no dice in your pool which can be legally placed anywhere in play, then you suffer damage. If you're holding any rings when you suffer damage, then you lose all of your rings. It doesn't matter whether you're holding only one ring or a whole lot, you lose them all and remain safe. Your spending step is now over. If you suffer damage when you have no rings, then you lose one life. Flip a life token to its death side, discard all of your badniks and dice, and your turn ends immediately, without resolving the end of turn phase. If any one player ever completely runs out of life points, then the game is over and the team loses. Once your spending step is over, you have a choice. Either proceed to the reroll step or the end of turn step. First, we'll look at the reroll step. First, you'll resolve all reroll effects in any order. You can find these on badniks or on your player card. Next, you must re-roll all of the dice in your pool. Then check for damage. If any of the dice in your pool now match, both in colour and number, any of the dice showing on the left-hand sides of your badnik cards, you will suffer damage. In this case, I'm safe, but had I rolled a blue 4, then I would be suffering damage now. These icons are always blue, yellow, or white, meaning, as usual, that you're safest when you're spinning. Now you'll return to the start of a new spending step. Do note that you can't suffer multiple points of damage in the same moment, meaning you'll always have a chance to take at least one other action between losing your rings and having the risk of losing a life. If you suffer damage, you're invulnerable to further damage until the next time you spend a die, perform a reroll, or end your turn. After your spending step, if you choose not to reroll, then you go to the end of turn step. If your dice pool is empty at the end of your spending step, then you must choose to end your turn. If there are any dice in your pool, discard them all and then take one time token. This both brings the team closer to defeat and it's added to your personal collection for negative points. Resolve any end of turn effects on cards or badniks and proceed to the next player's turn. Any dice that you left on zone cards remain there as progress. Now we'll have a look at some of the rewards, abilities and penalties that you can collect. For an icon showing a number of rings, you collect that many rings, and remember that a yellow die will always give you one additional ring. As we've seen, the main benefit of rings is that they prevent you from losing lives when you suffer damage. However, they can also be collected for points, and if you collect a large supply of rings, you can lose them all with a single piece of damage, costing you a lot of points. To counteract this, you can use the star post benefit. With this, you may optionally choose to bank all of your current rings into your scoring pile. They'll definitely score at the end of the scenario, but they no longer protect you from damage, meaning that you're temporarily vulnerable to losing a life. This is an all or nothing decision. You must bank either all of your rings or none of them. This benefit allows you to take a boost token, which is one of the most important resources at your disposal. After re-rolling, but before checking for damage, you may spend a boost to re-roll your entire pool again. And you can continue doing this until you get a set of results that you like. On the flowchart, that means to repeat this specific step. You may also use a boost after your roll step, but do be warned, this takes you to a re-roll step and means you have to check for damage on your badniks. This bonus grants you a power-up. Simply take and resolve the top card from the power-up deck. Some are resolved and discarded immediately. Others are kept until used or lost. There are also 4 types of shields, and if you're holding one and suffer damage, then you lose the shield instead of losing rings or a life. You may only have 1 shield at a time, each of which has its own individual power, and if you draw a second shield, you must choose which of the 2 you'll keep. Some effects let you gain or lose a die from your pool. When you gain a die, roll it into your pool. This is a safe roll, you don't have to check this one for damage. Not all effects are good. This icon triggers new badniks to enter play. Draw 1 new badnik and add it to your own pool, and then draw another new badnik and choose another player to take it. Each player may have a maximum of 3 badniks. So if you already have 3, you don't draw one for yourself, and if other players already have 3, then you must choose someone else to take the second draw. If everyone has 3, simply stop drawing. Newly drawn badniks with spend effects do not trigger in the same spending step they were drawn, but any other new effects start to apply immediately. With this icon, you must roll the depicted number of black hazard dice. Roll them and compare them with the dice currently in your pool. If there are any matches, you suffer damage. Then, whether there was damage or not, return them to the common supply. You cannot use boost tokens to protect you from hazard dice. In other words, I could not spend this now to re-roll either my coloured dice or the hazard dice. After damage from hazard dice, you're invulnerable until your next spend, re-roll, or end of turn. With this icon, you're forced to take time. Take one of the time tokens from the common stack and add it to your collection for negative points. The final icon is the big ring. This is not about collecting rings. This allows you to play the bonus stage. This is where you'll try to collect Chaos Emeralds. When you play the bonus stage, choose any one tile and flip it over. If you get a red sphere, then your time in the bonus stage is over and you claim the reward printed in the top right corner. If you flip a bumper sphere, then you're still alive. Gain the reward in the corner and flip again, continuing until you reach a red sphere. In this way, you can chain multiple bonuses together in one play. If you flip this tile, then you find a Chaos Emerald. Take the top card from the deck and flip it face up into your collection. You can hang on to it for the points, or at any point through the game, you can flip it over to resolve its once-off ability. It's still kept for points if it's been flipped over, it's just not worth as many. Upon finding a Chaos Emerald, gather up all of the bonus tiles and then reset the 4x4 grid. After completing a zone card, if there are no more zone cards in the deck to replace it, then discard all the zone cards and immediately proceed to the boss phase of the act. Find the set aside boss attack card and give it to the active player flipped over to the number 1 side. This functions like an extra badnik card, and it can be gained in addition to the standard limit of 3. In each lane of the boss mat, place a number of boss pattern cards so that you can see all of the icons present, equal to the number showing in the bottom left corner of the boss mat. Then place a small animal token on each of these spaces. These represent the boss's lives. Take note of the passive effect which applies to all players for this boss. The player who triggered this phase then picks up with their current turn where they left off. You can spend dice to the boss attack card as you would a badnik. These cards are double-sided, and if you ever choose to hit the boss, You flip the card over, but get to ignore the effect that's on there for the rest of your turn. Whether you flipped it or not, you will always hand this card to the next active player as part of your end of turn phase. When spending dice, you can now spend to the leftmost open slot on any one of the leftmost cards. Each card has an easier bottom path with worse rewards or penalties, and a harder top path with better rewards. Once you've filled either the top or the bottom lane of a given card, discard it. This gives you the opportunity to swap from top to bottom between cards. Once all of the cards are removed from a lane, then you have the opportunity to do a direct hit to the boss by placing a die of the appropriate number and colour. These will almost always be red dice. When you land a hit, take an animal for points, and if the boss is out of animals, then the game is over and the team has won. However, if you ever reach the end of turn phase in which you've done at least one hit but haven't won the game, then you must refill all of these lanes to full capacity, sliding any cards as far to the left as they can before refilling under them, and completely refilling the empty lanes. You do get to clear off the dice, but you will need to clear a path to that lane to hit again. Remove all small animals from the boss and the team wins the game. Run out of time tokens, or have any player run out of life points and the team loses. Having completed the scenario, you can now add up your final scores, either individually or together, to determine how well you've done. Your time bonus is made up of your zone cards and your time tokens. You gain +3 time for each zone card which you collected, and -1 time for each time token. To compare against other players, refer to this table. Whoever had the highest time score scores the top row of points, second highest scores the second row, and so on. If you're playing solo mode, then you simply score this number of points based on how many time tokens you collected. Score 10 points per ring, whether you saved it at a star post or not. Score 20 points for each small animal, and lose 30 points for each death token. Gain 50 points for an unexhausted Chaos Emerald, and 20 for an exhausted one. You may choose to play a fully competitive game, in which case instead of making a pool of time tokens and giving each player life points, set up the game with common supplies of death tokens and time tokens. You keep playing until the boss has been defeated, and there's no limit to the number of death tokens or time tokens any player may take. Scoring is unchanged, and the player with the highest score wins. You may also play campaign mode, in which you play all 4 of the zones one after the other in this order. For almost all purposes, you treat the setup of each scenario as independent, going to the basic setup rules for the game. However, between scenarios, any Chaos Emeralds you collect are placed face up into a central pool available to all players. The common Chaos Emeralds can be exhausted by a player who pays 5 rings. These replenish again at the end of each zone. Across the campaign, you have 2 aims: complete all 4 zones and collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds. If you complete the zones without all the emeralds, replay zones until you have all 7. Once you've successfully completed the campaign, feel free to break the seal in the rulebook and continue with your next challenge. And that's how to play Sonic Roll.
Thanks so much for watching. Your like and comments are much appreciated. Subscribe to see what's coming, and hopefully you have a wonderful day. See you next time.